Hi, welcome to Box of a Box Rock and Celluloid. I'm over Box. So recently I've been doing top 10 films by some of my favourite filmmakers. Now prior to this I did, I think on Masters of Cinema, I did Michael Mann, David Fincher and Brian De Palma. But I ended up going through all the films and I kind of thought I was better doing top 10s. But there was a couple of filmmakers I kind of couldn't do top 10s for. One which is coming up, which is Sergio Leone, because he didn't have 10 films. The other one I'm going to do today is William Friedkin, director I really like his really good films. And I think he's an important filmmaker, but you could do a top 10, but it'd kind of be a bit pointless because, once you get to 6 or 7 films, I'd just be picking films I don't really like. If I'm honest, Friedkin's one of those filmmakers. When he blew hot, he blew very hot, and then he had a period of being very cold. But we'll have a quick look through. So he's kind of a movie brat, Friedkin. He comes up through documentaries when he's very young. He's actually a bit older than you'd think. He's actually born 1935, so when he's first making his documentaries in 1962, he's got a few. He's got The People versus Paul Crump, The Bold Man, Mayhem on a Sunday Afternoon, The Thin Blue Line. So kind of like Kubrick in that respect, coming up through documentary. Obviously a lot of directors in this era came up through TV prior to this, so Friedkin's the same age. He's a little older than Francis Coppola, so he's kind of a movie brat, but he's kind of not as well. But unlike those guys, he will have been brought up on John Ford, Howard Hawks, Orson Welles. So yeah, he fits in with that. So his debut film's Good Times, which is, I've never seen this, it's like a kind of comedy musical pastiche with Sonny and Cher. It didn't do very well, but he obviously showed skills with it. And then he did an adaptation of The Birthday Party, the Harold Pinter play with Robert Shaw, Patrick McGee, and so on. Again, wasn't a great success, but we've got some good reviews, and I think that's the thing back then. If your film doesn't make money, as long as you show you can do stuff. They did The Night They Raided Minsky's, which is a celebration of burlesque theatre. This took 3 million at the box office. I'm not sure what the budget was. Again, I think it just about broke even. Quite interesting because this has Norman Wisdom in. I'm not sure if this was his only American film. And then he did The Boys in the Band, and this was remade recently. It's a famous play which covers gay culture. So it was on Netflix. So again, this is quite probably quite groundbreaking for its time. I think he just takes guys who were in the original play. Could be wrong there. And I think it's shot, quite like the play, basically. Again, it's got a good approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I haven't seen this version, but I'm guessing. Basically, these 4 films showed Friedkin could direct actors and make films. I think it's quite interesting. He kind of mirrors Coppola in this way. Coppola did Dementia 13, 1962. Then there was You're a Big Boy Now, The Rain People, and Finian's Rainbow. So like Coppola had kind of 4 films. Finian's Rainbow didn't make money, but I think The Rain People kind of did quite well at Cannes, and it just showed people enough where it's like, oh well, maybe this guy can do The Godfather. So Friedkin's next film is an all-time classic. It's one of the great films. It's probably the equal greatest cop film ever, along with Dirty Harry. I prefer Dirty Harry, but this is a more serious film. It's of course The French Connection. So for this, he wins Best Director Oscar. He gets Best Actor. He wins 5 in total. I think this is where his documentary realism comes into play. His ability kind of shoot on locations. I think it's Owen Royceman does the stellar cinematography on this. I think Owen Royceman did Serpico as well. So it's amazing. Gene Hackman gives an incredible performance. So does Roy Scheider, Fernando Rey. I think what's interesting about Friedkin's style is his docu style isn't, there's not, you've got your handheld camera in you, your Verity thing, but it's more, there's a kind of realism he gets in the performances and the look that's kind of more than just how the camera's shot, and you'll see this in his other films. And when you see him interviewed, his personality, when he gets a film right, his personality comes through in that way. It's that hardness, that uncompromising vision, I suppose. He's an interesting guy when you see him interviewed Friedkin. I like him. You won't mess with him. So this is a great film. Box office $75 million worldwide in 1971. I can tell you, I think the average ticket price then is about $1.60. So multiply that by 6. So, you're talking about $450 million gross for what is effectively a really gnarly, quite nasty cop thriller. And it's got a great ambiguous ending, and that's something Friedkin in the 70s, you start having these slightly open-ended and ambiguous and not complete endings to 70s cinema, which will last for a brief period, or you won't have happy endings. It starts with Bonnie and Clyde, I suppose, and by the time Jaws happens, that brings in the kind of satisfactory closing narrative again, and then they'll kind of duke it out, and then that kind of era of cinema will pass, really. The budget was only 1.8 million. This made a star of Gene Hackman. So Gene Hackman was a great supporting actor before this. He'd been nominated for supporting actor for Bonnie and Clyde and I Never Sang for My Father, and he kind of took second leads and third leads in a string of films after that, but he was pushed to the lead for this, and after this he was very much a character star all the way through the 70s, and so on, and it got Roy Scheider better noticed, and that enabled to get Jaws and so on. Not really much you can say about this car chase. It's amazing. It's great. It's really well paced. Only 104 minutes. Films are so long now. You got this classic film. It looks great, especially when you see a good print of this. And it's got that thing where the credits are so sparse. It almost is like a documentary. So classic. Gonna be put on a lot of anyone's kind of fave film lists, I think this. So after this, of course, how do you follow that up? Well, you follow it up with like one of the biggest films of all time after Inflation, and probably the first truly realistic horror film. After Rosemary's Baby, that's the first big studio horror film. Then he but he films William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist. So what makes this stand out, aside from its box office gross, $441 million in 1973. It was re-released, but if you go online, if you look for inflation adjusted grosses, this film would gross, I don't know, $2.5 billion now. It would be maybe not as big as Avengers Endgame and Infinity War, but it would be as big as The Force Awakens or something like that, or in terms of gross, I would say. $12 million budget, so massive budget increase. There's a couple of cuts to 2,000 cuts, 132 minutes. This is the one I saw, I think. I actually saw this on video when I was a kid. We weren't supposed to watch it. It was in my mate's house. We were 13. His parents were out, so we had it on. And then they came back. We had to get the video out, and it was like we're coming, we're sat on our hands. And I think they knew there was something up. But it was scary. When people see it now, they can wonder what all the fuss is about. But I think it has a level of realism. Probably the best bit is when they do the tests on Reagan. And they're actually made up. They just got like a bunch of gear out and just did kind of things that look like really kind of disturbing and intrusive. But that's shot really documentary style. It works really well. The cinematography is great. Again, it's Owen Roisman. I love the flash frames as well. The Demon. Great acting. Jason Miller is really good. He's kind of got the soulful eyes, and you really feel his conflicts. Max von Sydow, amazing, and that incredible image. That is Max von Sydow turning up at the house. It's such a short image, but it's the poster. It's one of the cheesy word but iconic images of cinema. And Ellen Burstyn's fantastic. She was a bit of character actress. I think she's in the Last Picture Show. And then she did this, and this kind of made her a star in the 70s, and then she won the Oscar for Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. I think people forget, I think she had 5 Oscar nominations. She was one of the top female actresses in the 70s. I think she's great. I think she's still great, and it's a shame we can't see her more. So this is a really good film. Obviously, again, it's got a slightly ambiguous ending as well. It doesn't quite have that closure. I've actually been to the steps in New York, and they're pretty creepy. Well, it's Washington, sorry, Georgetown. Pretty creepy. There's a lot you could say about this film. Watch the Mark Kermode documentary. There's numerous things. It's a little bit cursed. But yeah, it's still like shocking. It was very shocking at the time with the crucifix and the girl with the twisting head. That is like really freaky back then. People might not see it now. So after this, he's got carte blanche. He's one of the biggest directors in the world, and he takes 4 years, and he decides to make Sorcerer. And this is where it starts to come unstuck. I've only seen this film once, and the reason for that was you just couldn't get it anywhere. And my mate managed to blag me a copy on DVD, and it didn't work on the machine. And then I tried going on YouTube, and the start of the film's quite strange, and the YouTube thing that someone had shared, it was just kind of in bits or whatever. And I was like, I can't watch this. Then all of a sudden, Mark Cooper, there was a documentary on Friedkin, and then it came out on Blu-ray. So I got it on Blu-ray. So basically, like Coppola, Coppola didn't quite get unstuck on Apocalypse Now because it made a profit. But obviously, I think he left a bit himself in the jungle. But he went to Venezuela for this, and it's quite extraordinary location shooting on this. Venezuela is probably a difficult place to shoot at the best of times. Interesting cast in this, people you wouldn't know apart from Roy Scheider. And there's criticisms that Roy Scheider maybe needed a Steve McQueen, maybe needed Gene Hackman, someone slightly bigger. But, Roy Scheider's coming off the back of Jaws on this. I really like Roy Scheider. I like him in this. Although I don't quite buy him as the Hood at the start. 121 minutes, the budget was 21 to 22 million, so this is a lot of money back then, and this is the problem with the film, its rentals worldwide were only 9 million. But this has got some extraordinary sequences in, and not least the bit where they have a truck on a bridge and have to get it across the bridge. So this is based on The Wages of Fear, the Henry George Clouzot film with Yves Montand, and they're transporting explosives in this. So, any sudden vibrations, movements, it's really tense. And if this bridge sequence is extraordinary, I mean, it's health and safety nightmare. I think it's shot on location. You just wouldn't, it'd be CGI now, it'd just be a studio. And there's an amazing bit where the camera drops in the water because a character falls in the water, I think. And it's just really, really superb, brilliantly tense. Obviously it's got a downbeat ending now. By this point, the downbeat ending thing is starting to go away. You've got Close Encounters of Star Wars, which have upbeat endings. Jaws, he shoots the shark, and there's just starting to be this switch in 70s cinema where people are kind of seeking out something different, and the movie brat filmmakers like Spielberg and Lucas, who are more optimistic, are going to win the day. I really recommend this film. It's kind of a flawed classic. A lot of people, he thinks it's his best film. Tarantino loves it. I want to watch it again. But it's really good. It's well worth the wait to see. So after that, he does The Brink's Job. This is a comedy. I think I've seen it once. I'm not really bothered with this. He isn't bothered with it. Interestingly enough, the budget's 16.4 million, quite expensive, and it grossed 14.5 million box office. So, not quite equaling its budget there. So again, probably causing trouble. But apparently, Peter Falk gives a great performance in this, but I can't remember it. If you're English, sometimes it's shown on Talking Pictures TV. So after this, he does yet more controversy. This is a strange film. It's cruising. Every time I watch this film, I can't work out whether I like it, whether it's, great, bad, but you have to watch it again. It's just weird. It's a strange film, very controversial in its day. Pacino is great. He's got great hair. It's different performance, Pacino. It's his last kind of subdued internal performance. It's his more Michael Frank Serpico mode. And it's quite interesting that he's doing a cop thing after Serpico, but it's 1980, and again, it's that changing time thing. Quite successful, budget 11 million, box office 19.8. So it's you kind of get the talk this film was a flop, but it wasn't. But very controversial about its depiction of homosexual gay culture in New York. Because it kind of plays into cliches, I suppose. But the real controversy was the guy that he's going into the gay scene to track a serial killer. Again, Basic Instinct was another film that got caught up in this with the Sharon Stone character being bisexual and being maybe being a killer, as it were, and that having protests. I like this film again. Cinematographer is a guy called James Compner. You would have thought it'd be Owen Roisman. For the look, this probably has one of the most ambiguous endings ever. It really is odd ending. I can't really describe it. And there's a really good documentary on the DVD. It actually got some Golden Raspberry Awards. Worst picture, worst director, worst screenplay. But yeah, people, you know, like this film. It's an interesting film. The feminist Camilla Paglia, I love Cruising. Quentin Tarantino loves it. Well worth checking out. So then, after this, he does start to, his next film, Deal of the Century. Now, I must be honest, have I seen this film? Chevy Chase, Sigourney Weaver, Gregory Hines. It's some kind of comedy. I think I might have seen it. Its budget was 10 million, its box office 10 million. If I've seen it, I can't really remember anything about it. It's received poorly by critics, 11%. So then he gets back to cop things and gets back on track with To Live and Die in LA. This is quite successful, $6 million budget, $17.3 million gross. I like this film, it's gritty. The problem is it's a bit too 80s. It has none of the gritty sheen. It's got gritty violence, it's got gritty scenes, but it's a bit too 80s and glossy for me. But it is good. The music's by Wang Chung, which dates it. Robbie Muller, just some cool cinematography, who's Wim Wenders' cinematographer. What's interesting about it, it's got William Peterson before he was tracking Hannibal Lecter and Willem Dafoe. Spoiler alert, so switch off now. Quite interesting, the William Peterson character dies kind of halfway through the film doing a kind of Hitchcock thing. So it doesn't have that obvious hero, but it's about counterfeiting. He tries to outdo himself with a car chase, so he has a car chase with the cars going the wrong way on the LA freeway, which is really cool. Again, I've seen this a few times, but I haven't seen it for a long time. I want to watch it again. But it got him back on track again. It sort of got him some good notices and some good box office. Then he does Rampage, which is a serial killer film with Michael Biehn and Alex MacArthur. Interesting enough, Alex MacArthur is an actor who's in LA Takedown, the pre-make of Heat. I've got to be honest with you, I haven't seen this film. I just need to dig it out. Then there's The Guardian. This was initial excitement with this because it's his first horror film after The Exorcist, but it's really stupid. It's about a nanny who's a tree or something. I kind of quite like it. It's quite goofy. The trailer was much better than the film, so it didn't really do him any favours, but the box office wasn't bad. I imagine it wasn't that expensive. Then there's Blue Chips, which is a basketball film with Nick Nolte, written by Ron Shelton. Again, this didn't do great. Obviously, basketball films don't do well in Europe, England, so got to be honest, I haven't checked it out. Then he does Jade, so this is the film Joe Esterhaans is selling, another erotic thriller script that goes for a lot of money, and this is the film Let's Make a Star of David Caruso, so he's in this, and Kiss of Death in 1995, and he shouldn't have left NYPD Blue. He ends up back on CSI Miami, doing the same acting, playing the same character. I've seen this, it's a long time ago. It's got a car chase. It was kind of sold on that, but had piss poor reviews. This is the problem. Then you get interesting directors in the 80s and 90s. Less so the 90s, but they end up being given studio fare. This is what happens to Coppola. Coppola and Friedkin kind of end up in the same boat, whereas De Palma gets some good stuff. Scorsese obviously does well in the 90s, less so in the 80s. Spielberg just continues to be Spielberg. Lucas, well, he doesn't direct till in the 90s. Then you got Rules of Engagement. I mean, this was a decent drama. The box office was good. The budget was 60 million. The box office was 71 million. Tommy Lee Jones, Samuel Jackson. It's a military courtroom drama. I think the problem with this film is it could be directed by anyone. A reasonable metteur en scène, as they say, a reasonable professional. It's quite a decent film, but it just hasn't got a lot of personality. Then he does The Hunted. This is another odd film. It kind of it's Tommy Lee Jones coming back to work with Benicio del Toro. He's kind of tracking Benicio del Toro's rogue soldier. This should have been really interesting, but you just feel like everyone's kind of disinterested. You feel like Friedkin's disinterested, Tommy Lee Jones is Benicio del Toro. 94 minutes running time. The box office was $45 million budget. Again, I kind of think this film's kind of heavily edited. I don't think they necessarily had the material. There was another. They set out to make another film, I think, and it hasn't come off. So, kind of weird. I mean, he's kind of keeping making films, but none of them really catching fire. And then he does Bug, which is a weird indie film, $4 million budget. It's 8.2 million gross. It's based on a play by Tracy Letts. So basically, Michael Shannon and Ashley Judd kind of shacked up, and Michael Shannon gets more paranoid and goes mad, and he puts tinfoil in his house and he thinks there's bugs. Something like that. Actually, quite like. It's a long time since I've seen it. It will be over 10 years. It's pretty good. It's not great, but it's edgy. It's uncompromising. The acting's good, and it's weird. It's almost like Friedkin going back to where he started with those early films. You know, the birthday party. He's kind of making a play. He's kind of making an interior piece, and this gets some deep synopsises, and that leads him on to working on a Tracy Letts again. He makes Killer Joe, which is infinitely his best film since Cruising or To Live and Die in LA. Maybe his best film since Sorcerer. This again is Tracy Letts' play. Matthew McConaughey begins his reconnaissance with this. He gives a great performance. He plays a nasty character. Emile Hirsch is good. Gina Temple, Gina Gershon, Thomas Hayden Church, all really good. Obviously it's a play, but it's kind of set, you know, it's opened out a bit. But, you know, it's shot pretty straight ahead, but again, it's got that uncompromising. He does not compromise in this Friedkin. There's a bit where Gina Gershon's character is forced to perform a fellatio on a piece of chicken, and it's really hardcore. Yeah, it's a good film. I need to see this again. When I watched it, I was like, easy 8 out of 10. It's got good reviews. It's kind of darkly comic and quite vicious. Then he just did a couple of documentaries. He hasn't directed since then. So that's it. That's my run through William Friedkin. You know, it's one of those things you could come up with kind of 6, 7 films. Of 7. You know, you're like, yeah, you could do them a top 7, and they would all be relevant in there. But I just find it harder to kind of get a 10, and that's why I didn't do it. He's been married 4 times, but he's been married for a while to Sherry Lansing. But obviously, like quite a hard guy. Compromising guy, and when his films catch fire, that comes through in them, and that makes him an essential filmmaker to check out. Okay, thanks very much. Remember to share and subscribe, Bot Brack, and hopefully I'll see you again. Cheers, bye now.